Naina, ki aur, ki ke oe wa ta'awa, ki e whangaparo te moana e Naina. Ko Brett Butland te toku ingoa. O reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for Peter for the introductions, and Michelle. It's lovely to be here, and so it's lovely to catch up with some people we've worked with over time, and I'm sure through the day the stories that we talk about, the points we talk about, others will reinforce, I hope. But Andrew will no doubt talk about DNA material, and we use that quite a bit in Simon with CLM solutions. So there's a lot of commonality in the room, whether it be from a research perspective, an activity perspective, or eradication work around the country. So the question we all want to know is can we do this? And what I hope to do through this presentation is demonstrate that actually we can eliminate mustelids, rats and possums in areas without fences and off island. So it can be done in backyards and where people live, work and play. And I hope to demonstrate the answer to that through the session. The first slide is really a question, and I wonder if there are any thoughts about what apart from initials, but from what John Key and John Kennedy have in common, apart from JK. Any ideas? Any thoughts? Was a question someone wanted to know earlier on? Well, the simple answer really is that both of these gentlemen actually sort of suggested a moonshot. On the American front, it was literally to get to the moon. They didn't know how they were going to do it, but they got there. In John Key's case, it was the moonshot was, can New Zealand eradicate predators? Or predator species, particularly mustelids, rodents, and possums from New Zealand. And at the time, it was an audacious kind of statement, really. Let's do it. Yeah, this is our chance. This is our moonshot. So both are equally as challenging, although in different ways. But at the time when those statements, those goals were put down, no one knew how to do it, and yet certainly on the American case, they have done it. So when the goal was launched in 2018, there was an assumed equation of really we would just divide New Zealand up, and over time between then and 2050, would just do equal number of hectares per annum. Simple equation, sort of 26 million hectares, give or take. Divide by 32 years, 800,000 hectares, and we get the whole country done. And at that stage, it was estimated to cost about $32 billion. But with best laid plans, that graph just was never going to happen, and we soon learned that. And I'll come back to this graph in a little while's time. You've probably seen ecological invasion curves. COVID is a really good example. It's quite topical, but as you can see on the graph there, there's a point at which the organism is not in the country, it's not present, whether it's at a site or a country, irrespective of the scale, is not there, and then suddenly it is. And when the suddenly it is part happens, you've really got a couple of options. You can either eradicate it immediately, and that's your cheapest option at the time, and it'll probably be your most effective. Very small population typically, and at quite discrete sites. And if that doesn't work, the graph starts to increase in area and complexity, and then you start to contain it. You try and reduce its impact. You can probably start seeing some overlaps with COVID. And then if that still doesn't work, if you can't contain it, then you get into long-term management, which is again you're trying to reduce the impact. And if that doesn't work, in worst case scenarios, you just walk away from it. Now that typically happens in invasive, in ecological invasive species, but also it happens in other diseases. So it comes down to four options really. You can do nothing, which will be your cheapest one. You can do suppression, or you try and control it or contain it. You can eliminate, and you can eradicate. And I'll just describe those terms in a little bit more detail. So if you do nothing, what's going to happen is your number of invasive species is going to increase, and your native species, your indigenous species, are going to decrease, and eventually it'll all be gone. One will be gone, and one will dominate. Okay? But from a cost perspective, that's your lowest cost or no cost. But when it comes to suppression, you're trying to contain it, you're trying to limit the impact. You'd have a barrier of some sort. It could be an island, it could be a landscape, and you would control things to a level where you're trying to get biodiversity to recover in time to a degree, but you're still going to have those invasive species in your landscape. So from a cost perspective, you go up and down. You get excited. You put some more money in. You'll be able to fundraise, stand outside of a hardware shop and raise some dollars, selling sausages, etc. And so your budget, you've got this up and down. And as a result of that, your benefits and your rewards are equally up and down. But fundamentally, biodiversity is never going to fully recover. It's never going to get to optimal recovery. And you won't ever get rid of all your predators because you're not actually eliminating them. You're reaching that point where, and it could be an IDC of 3%, for example, where biodiversity will start to recover, and your predators are at a low level. Now the awkwardness with this option is that it's ongoing. There's no end game unless you walk away. So once you start putting money in, you just keep on doing it, using the same methods, using the same approaches, and you'll get the same answer. The old question: if you do things the same way, you're going to get the same result. Well, that typically happens in suppression, give or take. And one of the issues around that, or two of the issues around that, is we're starting to find, and it's a real concern for the national project, is that you get learned behaviour. And no doubt you will come across where you get trap-shy animals, whether it be a stoat or a rat or something like that. They're probably more intelligent than we give them credit for. But you'll start to get learned behaviour. And what's even more concerning is that some animals are being taught that behaviour from the parents or from other animals. And the other risk is that you'll start to get toxin-resistant animals too if you're using a toxin. So both. If you're using a toxin or a trap, there's some challenges around ongoing suppression, apart from bioaccumulation. Okay, so as I said, there's no end game, and that's what is troubling for a lot of people. Okay, elimination and eradication are reasonably similar in many respects, but in elimination, it's a landscape rather than a defendable continent or island. And so you'll have natural barriers that you'll need. It needs to be a defendable site. So in this picture, it's effectively a river going up to an alpine ridge, and then out to the end of that landscape. So what you're trying to do is remove every invasive species from that managed area, and then you'll get optimal recovery inside there. From an eradication perspective, if it's an island, you get them off the island. Rangitoto, Motutapu, Motihe, all examples of it. If it's a landscape, you can't do that. It's an elimination. For eradication to be successful, it'll be the North Island or the South Island or Rakiura. So it's about scale. Obviously, the promised land that we're after is the whole of the country free. So from a cost and time effort, it's your costs are initially high. They'll go very high, and then it drops off reasonably fast. And your ongoing maintenance costs are reasonably low. But the costs are high. There's no doubt about it to do it. And so the objective is every animal's gone, every invasive species or every target species is removed. And things to think about are the concurrent species. If you're dealing with hedgehogs, so what about rats, or what about rabbits? We're depending on where you are. So what you need for eradication to be successful is that there must be some fatal solution for every target animal, and not at a population level, but at an individual animal level. And if you can't do that, eradication is not going to be successful. So the amount of work and effort and precision required for elimination or eradication is much different, significantly greater than for suppression. So you have to be able to get into your sheds if you're in an urban environment, for example, under houses, in rusty old vehicles parked on abandoned lots, because that's all have a habitat for some of the species. So one of the advantages of eradication is that there is an end game, and a lot of people don't like particularly don't like the use of toxins. In fact, some people don't like the use of traps either. But there's an end game, so the job's done, and that's it. Then you defend. And as a result, people are more willing to tolerate those solutions because the benefit is significantly greater, and it comes to an end. For that to be successful, you do need detection strategies around how to find invaders, because there will always be an invader, whether it's at the border or pre-border sort of coming in. But there will always be some invader, some animal coming in. So you need to be able to detect that, and you can actively deal with it. So, with all of that, the Cabinet approved the company Predatory 2050 Limited, established as we're a Crown-owned company, and we were set up to enable and support predatory eradication. DOC's the overall, Department of Conservation is the overall agency that sets the policy, and they deliver on their land. We work collectively very well together. But a large part of New Zealand obviously is on private land, Māori-owned land, council-owned land, as well as Crown land. So there are all sorts of land tenures we work across. And for us, just like the birds and the bees, we don't actually care where the boundary is. It's just got to get done. So we're a key enabler of the mission. We're not it. It's the classic dilemma. You can't do it on your own. It's too big. We have to work together. So it's lovely to work with landowners, with mana whenua, with councils, with businesses, with researchers. You name it. It's a wonderful collective. Our key outcomes is around breakthrough science, and that's sort of the longer term science to transform the mission. Developing new tools to be able to do that. Community engagement, and then for now showing a proof of concept. Can we do it? Okay, so a little bit about our landscape projects. Around that proof of concept. When the company got going, it brought out its first tranche, and in 2018 we invested in established 6 projects in Taranaki, Hawke's Bay, Wellington, in the city, and another one just behind Wellington, capital Kiwi, and on Waiheke Island and in Dunedin. In 2020, with some funding from the Provincial Growth Fund, several more projects, D'Urville Island, Chatham's, Te Kinga, Whangarei and Whakatane. But Te Kinga, Whangarei and Whakatane were funded from the Provincial Growth Fund. And then Jobs for Nature came post the COVID stimulus package, and that enabled us to invest in several more projects and expand projects. So that was Banks Peninsula, expanded Wellington, Wakaruana, Southland, and then South Westland on Aotea, top third, Bay of Islands, Fairwell Spit, Waiheke Extension, and Kawa on Kaipara. So all of those projects really for us were selected to demonstrate proof of concept. Can we do it? And as you can see from that, and then where they are based around the country, they're all in different places. None of them really are the same. And that was quite intentional for us. We didn't want projects that we can actively compare like for like with. So that's not going to help us learn. So they're all different. The structures, the governance, the funding models, their approach, the species composition, all of it's different. So maximum learning. Sorry, I'll go back to that slide. There are some sites that you'll see, if you might pick up that I mentioned, that are not on this map, because we have had 3 projects that haven't continued, have ceased. And that was one of the critical things when we set up the cabinet at the time. Our constitution is very clear about taking a punt, give it a go, try it, and if it doesn't work, then pull out. You're going to fail fast. Learn from that and move on. But if we don't try that with around risk, then we're never going to get to be where we are either. So we're okay. Okay, some of the learnings that we've got in Wellington around the Miramar Peninsula. The Project Periphery Wellington have eliminated stoats, weasels and Norway rats from that peninsula. So we land into Wellington, so hopefully facing the runway, not down the wing. But that site now is effectively clear, and it's just a handful of shipwrecks that are hanging out. And we've had to learn a lot about shipwrecks, because the previous view was that a shipwreck would come to the ground at some point, you could deal with it. What we've learned is that actually for a number of individual animals, they're having the whole life cycle in a tree or arboreal habitat. So that's been a valuable learning for us, it really has. In Taranaki, eliminated possums from about 1,000 hectares in Kaitaki, and look to expand that soon. South Westland, that's one of our larger projects. It's 100,000 hectares, and now eliminated rats, possums and stoats in those blocks, which is around 42,000 hectares. So it's the scale is getting bigger all the time. Mahia Peninsula, that's on track to eliminate possums across the peninsula. It'll be 15,000 hectares. And Waihiki's on track for stoats. And just busy tidying up a 3-site trial to see if we can actually deal with rats on that island using ground-based methods. Traditionally, where we've had success, they've been largely aerial. But the issue with the Waiheke is challenging us with is how do we deal with rats in mangrove swamps, because that's all where sites are. And the team have innovated really nicely to come up with some sort of pontoon floating bait station. So it's challenging the learning, challenging the thinking all of the time. And Dunedin and Capital Kiwi are also tracking well to eliminate either stoats or possums and mustard generally. So what we are learning from these initial projects, because the others are a little bit further down the line in terms of the operational success, is that we can, using existing tools, eliminate animals of target species from the mainland, which is 5 years ago we didn't know we could do it. So it's been quite a substantial bit of progress over the last couple of years. In all of those sites, invasion does occur, but with the help of new tools, we can detect animals quickly and then go and present effectively a fatal solution to those individual invaders. There's some great stories in Southwestern, for example, using thermal imaging, finding the individual animal, learning about what its behaviour is, what its behaviour is through cameras, and then put a bit of a bait in front of it, irresistible, and away it goes. So learning that we don't need to panic when we find an individual animal, because technology is reliable enough now that we can find the individual animal to deal with it. EWE engagement is critical for us. It simply can't. The mission can't happen without it. It's quite honestly. So it's important for us that we enable, as a company, we enable EWE leadership across the sector and across all of our projects. It's not that it needs to be, but it is a key funding requirement for us that EWE are involved, Mana Whenua are involved at place in ways that suits them, that works for them. So whether it's governance or through trapping projects or whatever, there's all sorts. We've got 3 iwi-led projects now in Whakatane, in Kaipara, and on out here, and we'll keep on growing those. All of our projects, all of our funding requires it, but what is fantastic is that actually that's never been required. It's common sense to everybody that everybody works together. It's lovely to see. It's actually nothing. There's no big deal really in that respect, but the benefits of it are everyone sees it. So it's not a challenging thing. Everyone's embracing everyone else. It's lovely. In terms of breakthrough science, the goal is achieving a science solution capable of eradicating at least one of our targets before 2025, so we've only got a couple of years left. And it's all about driving a shift from the business as usual approach into a more effective and efficient method of control. Thank you. So we are looking at application of genetics. It's not a corn gate. It's not that kind of work. It's actually understanding what's in the animals, how we use that knowledge. There's a lot of lab work done, but there's a huge amount of work that happens that needs to happen around that. I'll leave it to Andrew to chat a bit more about that. As a science strand, we have invested in 42 science projects, science and research projects, and all that, a lot of information straddled across a group of sectors or a group of projects will start to come through and inform the information or the approaches that we need. So breakthrough science is the far end of the science spectrum. A lot of the research work that typically people talk about through many of the CRIs, for example, is all the near-term work, what's happening now. But breakthrough is really looking at the far side of the spectrum. We've just got our second science strategy underway, looking at 4 strands around priority research work. There's enabling possum fertility, understanding a bit around that with the Otago University, predator monitoring using eDNA. Can we turn off stope breeding? So there was a question there. And then something around detecting the last predators through the science challenge. Capability work is a piece around reproduction and survival genes in possum. The genomic applications in mustard control, modelling multi-species work, and then another example would be audio predator detection and luring. Examples of our insurance research is understanding the last 1%. How do we get that last 1%? What we're finding is that projects are spending, in round figures, 90% of the funds getting rid of 10% of the funds getting rid of 90% of a predator population. And the last 10% of the funds the last 10% of the work is costing 90% of the funding. So it's very easy to get knocked down, but actually the mop-up, the complete removal is quite expensive. So looking at some insurance work around how do we get rid of those last few. And then some enabling elements is carbon accounting. We've paired up with the Clare Foundation and Island Conservation, trying to understand the impact of and be able to quantify the impact of sequestration from removal of omnivores in particular. We can extrapolate that if you get rid of, for example, possums, you're going to get more foliage. Therefore, it's going to you're going to be better sequestration. But actually, to monitor that or to quantify that is quite a different story. All right, tool development. We've now developed 7 new tools that are commercially in the market. We've got a further 11 tools and 4 best practice guides how to use those tools in an optimal way underway, and those will be ready for completion. Just a minute, and then yeah. So the investment in tool development is actually starting to get into the field. So some examples are those are the lures that Bothamist developed with us. Backcountry cameras, the motor lures, being able to pump a little bit of injection of mayonnaise into the field through a zip. I have got the message. I'm just choosing to ignore it. So the impact of our investment is projects are starting to develop proof of concept. So yes, we can do this. That's tremendously exciting. And research and development is showing that we can be more effective and more efficient. So where we're going next? Look at this graph. We're probably in the first stage. We are in the first stage around proof of concept. Tinkered around with some projects. We'll go into the second stage pretty soon. We will need to learn a few more questions, and then we'll go and then we'll hit the national rollout plan around 2030. We're going to need 20 years and several hundred million. So if anyone's feeling generous, I'll give you a bank account quite quickly.
We're going to defer to...
And I'll leave it there and answer questions a bit later.
Oh, yeah, no, you can.